All right, so welcome. My name's Nick Sadlowski. I'm the Digital Scholarship Librarian. I know both of you, so thank you for coming out. So this is a workshop on how to create and manage an ORCID profile. So if you would like to follow along or get these slides at any point, there's a URL here and a QR code, and anybody who has the link should be able to access the slides. So I'll hold on this for a minute in case anybody wants to follow along in the slides, but I'll say what we're going to do. I'm going to give a brief introduction to ORCID and what it is. I get very excited about ORCID. I think it's very cool, but I'll try not to go too much into the library details, and then we'll get to how to manage your profile, how to create it. It's all relatively straightforward, so hopefully this will be pretty easy to follow along with. I'll also show how there is an integration with eFaculty at SJSU, so I'm going to demonstrate that so you can see how that works. So here we go. So this is just the outline that I just went through. We're going to say, what is ORCID? We're going to create a profile, fill out the profile. We're going to talk about connecting ORCID accounts to eFaculty, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion. So what is ORCID? ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. So at its heart, ORCID is a unique identifier for researchers, authors, and contributors to research. It's a number that you can carry with you through your whole career, through your whole life, that identifies you uniquely, even compared to other researchers with the same name or anything like that. So it's a bit like your social security number, or your tower card for your research career, but you don't need to keep it a secret. It's not, nobody steals ORCID IDs as far as I've heard. So, but it is a useful thing. It's we'll talk a little bit more about the history, but thinking about this, why do we need unique identifiers in the research space? Mainly because names are not enough to uniquely identify people. Many researchers have the same name, and many researchers, for a variety of reasons, will publish under different names at different points in their lives. So on the computer side, on the side of like huge information systems, this lets the systems know uniquely which individual authored which article, which individual produced which data set. Without relying on names, which can be quite messy. So just some fun facts about ORCID. ORCID was founded in 2012 by a group of scholarly publishers, so it's over a decade old, and it's really become a key part of sort of the scholarly communication and research infrastructure globally since then. According to ORCID, 8.12 million researchers updated their ORCID profiles in just the past year, and over 14.5 million researchers in over 200 countries have ORCID IDs. So this is really a global system for identifying researchers and keeping track of their work. And at SJSU, we have over 1,400 SJSU researchers that have ORCID IDs and have identified themselves as affiliated with SJSU. There's probably more out there who have not indicated that they're with SJSU. So it's, this is very widespread. It's always free to researchers. And so your ORCID number and your profile goes with you. If you change institutions, if you're not affiliated with an institution, you keep it. Financially, the system is supported by member organizations, including publishers and universities. Publishers in particular really rely on this to do their work. And so, this is a stable system that has very broad support really all over the world. So that is one of the reasons that as we've switched off of the Expert Gallery Suite software, that we're really recommending this as something that is reliable, stable, kind of a permanent part of research infrastructure, and also something that researchers will find you will need this anyways. If you apply for grants, if you publish with a lot of commercial publishers, you will have to provide an ORCID ID generally to kind of interface with their systems. So it's a helpful thing to have, and it's probably nice to have it before the day your grant or manuscript is due. So you just have it ready to go and submit it. And every ORCID ID includes a public profile page. And it's up to you how much information you want to include on your profile page and which information you want to share with whom. But it does let you create a public profile to share with the world or to share with like select groups and organizations. And research databases like Scopus and Web of Science do rely on ORCID to match authors to publications. So the better your ORCID profile, the better your records in these other systems are going to be. And depending on kind of where you are in your career, you might be using something like Scopus or Web of Science to calculate your H-index or get citation counts. And having a very up-to-date ORCID profile can make sure that everything you've done is included in those Scopus and Web of Science profiles. So it's a good practice, and hopefully we'll see that it's not also too onerous to keep the profile up to date. And as an example, I'm going to use my profile. We'll walk through it, but I'll just open it now so you can see what it looks like. You can see it really is sort of like a digital CV kind of format. You've got your ID over here. You've got your information, and we're going to go through all these sections. But you've got an employment section, an education section. If I had funding and grants that I wanted to share with the world, they would be here. Works are down here. And that's the main bulk of it. And then you've got some more information over here on the left. There's a biography section. We'll show the edit screen so that in a minute so that you can see all the sections that I have not filled out on mine. Let's see. So, but if you haven't created an ORCID profile, here is some information about how to create one. You can go to orcid.org and then click on the link for register. So to go to this URL, orcid.org/register, and there's a simple form. It's really very straightforward, and the only tip I would give for starting your account is that consider adding a non-SJSU email address in addition to your SJSU email address. That just makes it really easy if you do end up changing institutions or anything like that. It's very easy to not lose access to your account. And that's a good practice for your Google Scholar profile or any other kind of profile like that that you want to be able to keep with you as well. Great, so we've got also a link to videos. So there's a whole video, there's really great documentation on this. I mean, one of the great things about using a system like this that has millions of users is they've done a lot of great documentation that's probably more complete even than what I'm going to give you today. So I really recommend their videos. You can this was a whole, quick 2 or 3 minute video of how to register for an ORCID ID. And then there's a whole section of how-to videos for all the specific tasks. So really most of the stuff that we're going to talk about, there's also a how-to video about that. And we'll add that link to the web page to make sure the videos are easy to find. So when you go to fill out your profile, there are 2 ways to add information. And you can, like on any kind of website, you can enter information by hand. But one of the real benefits of ORCID is that it has a lot of features, especially around publications and other works, to import data from another system. And so we're going to look specifically at how to do that and kind of what choices you might want to make as you do that. For every element on the page, including works, including biography, education, employment, you control the visibility and you control it at the item level. We'll show that. So you can make it public. You can give it to trusted parties only, which would be really for maybe you want the information to be accessible to an API at your institution or some other specific scenario that you want information that can be pulled in via computer but not shown on your public profile. And then private, things you won't only want to show you, only want yourself to see. So maybe something you've entered that you're not ready to share yet or something like that. All right, here are the profile sections. And I think so you can enter multiple names, a biography, employment, education and qualifications, professional activities like service, committee service, funding, and works. And I'll show how this looks on the edit screen. If we go back to my profile, I'm going to log in, so you'll see how this works. You'll sign in with either your ORCID ID or the email address you've used, just a regular password. You can do other, we don't have SSO for this, but you could do a Google account or Facebook account if you prefer. So here's what the edit screen looks like. It looks an awful lot like the public screen. But you can see that even, even things like your employer, those can be private if you want them. So if you want to include the information but not share it, that's easy to do just on every item. So that's a helpful thing as you're working through it. There's a space for biography. So you can see, like, I've shared my SJSU email, but I don't typically share my Gmail on this page. Don't mind sharing it in the video, but there it is. You would go to add something just the way you'd expect. You click on add. For something like an employment, you just get a simple form where you fill out the basic information and choose the visibility. The thing that I want to highlight that is less obvious is how much you can do automatically in terms of pulling in information specifically for works and funding. So one of the reasons we're recommending this as an alternative to Expert Gallery Suite is that I think this is one of the easiest profiles to populate of all the options that are out there. So when you go to add works, which is really where most of the work comes in and keeping up a kind of a faculty profile typically, when you go to add, instead of just the one option to add manually, you see a bunch of different ways that you can bring publications in. And the recommended way from ORCID is this search and link option. And I'll show you what that looks like. So when you go to search and link, there's a nice explanation up here. They're the ORCID's recommended way to populate the record, and they link out to a variety of providers for basically bibliographic information or information about other kinds of works. So information about articles, information about data sets, or even information about patents. And there are, I believe, 17 providers on this list. And I'm going to go back to the slides to show a list of the ones that I think will be most relevant to folks at SJSU and like where you might want to start as you work through this. So you'll see, depending on your field and your geographic, like, whether you publish internationally or mostly in the US, different ones of these databases are going to be relevant. I think the most relevant for a lot of folks is going to be Scopus. If you're in a STEM field or a social science field, a lot of your work is probably most likely in journal publications are often going to be indexed in Scopus. If you're in more of a humanities field, you may want to start with MLA. And then Crossref is another great source. Crossref will include anything that is published with a DOI. So there's a little bit of a different workflow, and I feel like I think the Scopus one is like a little bit easier, so I would start there. But if you aren't finding your works in Scopus or MLA, Crossref is a great spot, and it's really not particularly hard. It's just like a little more labor intensive. I would also recommend, if you want to include data, looking at this data site registry. If your work includes patents, pulling in those patents from the lens. And then if you have things that are published, for instance, like white papers you published in ScholarWorks or other places, BASE, the Bielefeld academic search engine, is a good source for more of the gray literature that's out there, because they index a lot of what's in institutional repositories, or I believe if you post things to like archive or other kind of preprint places that you want to index here, that would be a good place to look. You've also got options to add works by DOI or PubMed ID, or just to add works manually by a form. I think it's probably helpful to just show what this looks like, so it's not too intimidating. If we do a search and link, and we go to, let's do the I'm gonna copy this. Let's do Crossref even as a more, because I made it sound bad. You'll link through here and you'll get a simple search, and I'm going to put in a, I'm going to put in my name. I'll do this, search for my name and a keyword term from an article. So here's something that is actually something that is mine that is not on this record. So I'm going to show how this works. So here it is. I can see it's got a DOI. This is published out of ScholarWorks, and I found it. I know this piece, so I can bring it in. I'm just going to hit add to ORCID. Are you sure you want to? I do. So I hit yes, and it's in my record. And now when I go back to my record, before I think I had 11 things, and now I have 12 things. And that this is more of a pedagogical artifact, but this is here. It comes in. Some things will come in with a lot more information. This one came in with not much. But yeah, that's how it's that simple, that you basically just find the works in these various sources. You'll get a link to add them, and you'll add them to your profile. You can also see that some items you might end up pulling in from two, and it does a nice job not duplicating them, but instead giving you a choice of like which source you want to show it from. So this one, I think I pulled it in both from Crossref and from, oh, it looks like I entered it myself to get better information. So I'm using my own record as the preferred source, but I've got Crossref here linked to it. So there we go. That's kind of the key part. So I want to pause here see if there's any questions about entering works or collecting works. All right, great. The other area that includes a search and link option is the funding area. So you can search and link from a funding database called Dimensions Wizard. And so that's really helpful. And it's also, if you are someone whose research attracts funding, this is a good idea to do. It helps funders sort of track and see the impact of their support, because like having your funding and your publications on the same record will allow research information systems to connect those two things very easily and directly. So the other things you can edit are on the left sidebar. You can have email addresses, website, and social links. The website and social links are a good idea, I think, in terms of making sure your profile gets indexed. It's good to link it back and forth. Also a good idea to include, if you have other websites, it's always helpful to include a link into your ORCID profile on those websites. That will help make sure that your ORCID profile is one of the top things that people find when they Google your name. You can include other IDs. So I'll show, I think I have mine linked to my Scopus profile. So that's what it would mean to have other IDs. That can also help set up sort of some automatic updating from those systems. You can have keywords if you want people to be able to find you via the ORCID search. And you can associate your record with a country or more than one country. And these are all quite straightforward. You just click edit. If I were affiliated with another country, I could add one, select it from the drop-down. And I can have a country that's public and a country that's only visible to me if that's something that I want. So those are the editing details, really. I've always found it's a pretty straightforward system to use once you get used to it, and that the tools for bringing in publications from other services really helps avoid having faculty or other folks have to do a lot of data entry. One of the real benefits of this then is that once you pull your works into your ORCID profile, you can actually then pull them into your eFaculty account directly from ORCID. And this helps you get, vetted complete bibliographic information. So, accurate ISSN and issue numbers and all that if you don't want to have to track that down, and it just saves you time in entering things. So I'm going to walk through this. There's a link here. UP has, University Personnel has provided some great documentation on this process. It's definitely a little hidden in eFaculty, so we want to highlight it so people know it's there. So I'm going to walk through this on my profile so you can see it. So here's Interfolio or eFaculty. Got to move the screen a little. There we go. All right, so the ORCID integration is hidden in this category called Vidas and Biosketches. And then you have to go to Legacy Vidas. So Vidas and Biosketches, Legacy Vidas. Realize no one would ever guess that this is there, but that is where it is. You click here. So you would go to Vita Profile Systems, and I believe you should see the ORCID registry. If you have not authorized access yet, you'll see a button over here to authorize. And that's a straightforward process. You authorize and sign into your ORCID account. Once you've done that, you'll get this import button. You can hit import, and you can see publications that are new since the last time you updated and pulled things over into eFaculty. And you have the choice of which ones you want to pull in. And it just saves you a lot of data entry. And you'll see in your eFaculty profile, these will continue to be marked as imported from ORCID, so you can keep track of where they came from and any duplicates or anything like that that you need to update. One significant heads up about this is that not everything you would want to pull over is going to come over, and that the key thing that doesn't come over is co-authors. So it's important to add your co-authors for obvious reasons to the record. It's unfortunate that they don't come over, but you will get like a really helpful starting point. And especially like if you're new to SJSU and you're kind of populating a eFaculty account from scratch, this is a great way to do that. So that's really the last thing that I wanted to highlight. This has really been an overview of how updating an ORCID profile works and how you can use that to keep your eFaculty account up to date as well. What I'm going to do is show the contact screen, and then we'll come back and turn the recording off and do questions. So here's the contact screen. If you've downloaded the slides, you can get a link to the LibGuide that we're keeping, and I'm going to post this video to that LibGuide. And here's another link to the full documentation from ORCID. I think it's very helpful, but I'm also always happy to answer your questions about ORCID, so feel free to reach out to me with any specific or general questions about this. All right, thank you everyone watching the recording. I'm going to turn that off now.